We're going to get started. I'd like to call to order the May 28, 2013 meeting of the Buncombe County Commission, and I'd ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now if you'd join me in prayer. God, thank you for another day of beauty, comfort, safety, and a feeling of being secure. Thank you for the men and women that we've honored this past weekend on Memorial Day, 1.3 million of which have given their lives for our freedoms, from the American Revolution to the global war on terrorism. This number is 5 times the population of all of Buncombe County last year. These men and women left behind families, friends, communities that still grieve for them. Bless these families. Bless all the communities. Bless all the children, the grandchildren, everyone who has sacrificed for our country's freedoms and our rights that we enjoy so regularly and almost without thought today. Help us to take care of the families and friends, particularly of our current veterans. Honor the fallen comrades, even the ones that are just wounded or having other side effects from their service to our country for us. And help us to always recognize and appreciate the past military action that gives us our legacy of freedoms, value systems of hard work and sacrifice and love for our country. We have 22,000 veterans in Buncombe County. Help us to appreciate them, to thank them, and to make them feel welcome. Most of all, thank you for taking sometimes ordinary and regular men and women and making them extraordinary military veterans who keep us all safe. Thank you for the opportunity to live, work, and retire and enjoy life in a community that appreciates our veterans and appreciates all the sacrifice those who came before us have given us and given our children, grandchildren, those that come after us. Amen.
Amen.
In accordance with our code of ethics adopted by the Commission, it's the duty of every commissioner to avoid both actual and possible conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does anyone know of any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before our Commission today?
No.
All right. Then we will proceed with public comment. And we'll take public comment 3 minutes if you'll tell us your name and where you are from. Anyone want to have public comment today? Yes, sir, Mr. Yelton.
Reading the paper that the county residents are facing a 15% tax increase. I'm not smiling, sorry, because I see proposed by our own Nathan Ramsey 3.5% arts and culture tax. And it's rumored this is going to be doing some greenways. Well, folks, we live in the middle of the biggest, the most beautiful, and best greenway that's free for everybody. It's called the National Parks.
We're surrounded by them.
everywhere. So the bottom line is, why do we need that tax? I think we need that tax to replace the $2 to $3 million that the city's going to lose when the water authority's taken over. And that's nothing but a blatant vote-buying attempt. That's all it is. And to understand now, the city's announced they have found enough money they're going to get by all right. Well, sure they're going to get by all right. Because we're going to take away all the losers, the nature center and all that stuff, and we're going to shuffle it over to the county residents. And the city residents is going to have an increase in tax of 7.86 to 8-point-something%. About half what the county's getting. And we just heard yesterday, barbecue's going up, corn's going up, grain's going up, gas is going up. My affordable rent will be going up as a result of this tax increase. Can't you realize that when you keep on taxing, it passed down to the lowest of the low? And now we're passing a law that we're going to tax Priuses because they get good gas mileage. Well, who was the genius that said we had to get better gas miles for cars? The government. Couldn't they figure out when you got better gas mileage, you had less money to build roads? I think it shows you that when people get elected to office, two things happen. They get castrated and they get a frontal lobotomy. They don't have any long-range foresight to foresee what's happening. And there's a simple biological rule. It's called producers and consumers. You have to have enough producers to support the consumers. Because when the consumers get more than the producers, both the consumers and the producers die. In simple country boy logic, you put 1,000 head of cattle on an acre of ground, and guess what you got? Cow manure and mud and no grass and dead cattle. That's where you're headed with these taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Yelton. Any other public comment today? Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You all look relieved today for some reason. You're smiling, you come in early, you just looking really good today for some reason. But I tell you, I feel the pain of the community. And this tax hike that you are fixing to do, I've been here a long time, and I have never witnessed a board to ever assume anything like this. And I am ashamed of my Republican friends as commissioner not to be standing against this kind of stuff. I'm ashamed of you. Unless you're willing to stick your neck out and say it like it is and quit pandering to the people in the community and pandering to people that wants to raise taxes under the disguise of revenue neutral. I've never went as far to school as the most of you sitting up there. And let me tell you, I can still add 2 and 2. And I'll tell you what, when you avoid me, you're fixing to get it. Because I'm going to lay it on the line. Now, this time around ain't going to be pretty today. But the next time will be even a little bit harder. You telling me I can't talk about what the budget person's going to talk about today? Well, you're foolish, Mr. Chairman, you and all of you. When you put the taxpayers at risk, as I am, and tell me I can't say something, you need to go. All of you. Because I am one of the people that you supposedly represent. Now, when I come into a meeting, and I come and I see things like this, do you know what that represents? That's a two-face. Not only a two-face, it's got a big old long nose. That's called Pinocchio. That's what politicians are. They're Pinocchios. They'll campaign on one thing, and they'll run for another. They'll tell you this, they'll tell you that. And then when they get behind the desk up there, they'll tell you anything to soothe your little conscience. Now, let me take my nose off, because I'm not comfortable with two faces. I'll tell you like it is, whether I'm with you or without you. How about you? You said in the retreat, I'm going to wait till after the retreat. I'm going to wait till after the budget message. And then I'm going out into the community and talk to the people. Yous are ignorant. You know what ignorant is?
Thank you, sir. That's all.
You'll soon find out.
Anybody else want to? We'll look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Rice. We'll have our public hearing next week. Anybody else wish to be heard today? All right, then. We will finish our public comment for the day. Is there a motion to follow the agenda with the change in moving the special project ordinance to the third item of new business?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Jones. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Fryer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We will follow the agenda as changed by a 7-0 vote. Commissioner Fryer, you had a comment about Memorial Day, I believe.
Yeah, I have a comment. I went to the memorial thing up here at Pack Place yesterday, and Commissioner Jones did a fantastic job for the county, speaking for us, for the military, and I just wanted to thank her for that.
I've heard several glowing comments about her presentation. Thank you for representing us. I have a special presentation. I'd like for Donna Clark to come down, please, ma'am. Donna, I have a plaque from the North Carolina Government Finance Officers Association. It's a resolution that I'd like to read into the record and honor you with. Whereas Donna Clark has served as president of the North Carolina Government Finance Officers Association from March 4, 2012 to March 7, 2013, and whereas it is recognized that the NC Government Financial Officers has prospered during the devotion, integrity, and concern of Donna Clark. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the NC Government Finance Officers Association does recognize the contributions of Donna Clark as president for the time period she served and expresses their appreciation and gratitude. She is commended for her devoted, loyal, and dedicated service. It is further resolved that the best wishes are extended to her and her family as she continues public service, and that a copy of this resolution be made part of the permanent record of the NC Government Finance Officers Association and forward a copy to us. This is over and above what she does for Buncombe County, and we could not be more proud of Donna Clark. Let's give her a hand. And I asked her if she wanted to say anything, but I knew the answer before. Short words, as Commissioner Fryer said, but great action, right? All right. First item is good news. We have Ruth Cliff and Steve Duckett from the Cooperative Extension Program to come talk to us about green industry focus. Thanks for you folks coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the opportunity to share some of the successes that we've had with this program, and I'm going to turn it over to the real expert in this end of things, Mr. Cliff Ruth, who's our area horticultural agent.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to discuss what I do as an extension agent for Buncombe County and as well as the region. I am an area agent. So I don't just work in Buncombe County. I do work in the area. primarily in Transylvania County as well, but do quite a bit in multiple areas. We work together as a team, as Extension, to put together a lot of programs. The green team consists of myself. I chair the team along with Anthony LeBude, Megan Baker, our small farms agent here in Buncombe, Tim Matthews, a horticulture agent in Haywood County, and Kerry Roach, a horticulture agent in Henderson County. And as I said, I do both Buncombe and Transylvania, as well as do some statewide and international stuff. Most of you are probably familiar with the term green industry, but just to sort of highlight what that consists of, I'm not going to read the entire list, but it's those folks that work with the nurseries, landscapers, greenhouses, and the associate industries that provide landscape services or ecosystem services, those things that have to do with our environment and keeping areas clean and neat. Our primary focus as a green team was on workforce development. We focus a lot on the different types of certifications that are required by this industry to keep employed or become more employable. We do 45 to 50 classes a year. Some years it's more than that, some years a little less, depending on the need of that industry. And it continues to grow. I started off with about 5 different certifications or licensing that are required, and now we're looking at probably adding 2 more. Last year we had 9 different kinds of certifications or licenses required by the industry. The commercial pesticide license is a state and federal law requiring those folks to be licensed in ornamentals and turf for the most part, but we also have landscapers that need aquatic licenses, right-of-way licenses for DOT and utility companies. We do training for those folks. We have forestry license for our U.S. Forestry and North Carolina Forest Service folks. And we do both pre-exam preparation for those folks, as well as offer CEU classes, continuing education classes that are mandatory. Other classes, registered landscape contractors currently is not a state law, but it is municipal and local law that requires certain landscapers to become registered. Professional engineers, obviously a state law. Do work for licensed irrigation contractors, and that has been a state law since 2009. And they have to have a certain number of CEUs. We work with certified plant professionals, more of a voluntary thing by the individuals, but those individuals, oftentimes their employer require those certifications to become more employable or to get promoted in their place of work. We do certification for certified turf grass professionals, primarily for golf courses, your athletic turf professionals, and some of the landscapers. Again, not a requirement as far as legal requirement, but the employers require it to increase the person's salary or to promote them to a new level. Working some with the International Society of Arborists to help folks that want to become certified arborists. Working a lot with the landscape industry certification, and that certification is an international certification that I've been involved with some 10 years now, and actually serve on a industry certification council. I've done some work with North Carolina Low Impact Development, and actually am one of the first agents to become North Carolina certified as MPLAC, Low Impact Development. Doing a lot of work with workforce safety. All of our employers have to offer OSHA classes to keep in compliance with OSHA, and so I help those folks develop those classes and enforce those laws in those places of businesses. We do a lot with integrated pest management, trying to help our industry with pest scouting, identifying pest problems, finding the best ways to manage those pests without using harsh chemicals. We'll hit 2 or 3 highlights. The commercial pesticide license exam review, we just finished up 2 weeks ago. tends to end up with a 75% increase in passing scores by having those classes. Individuals do not have to take the class to take the exam, but most folks find taking the classes increases their ability to pass. And if they do not pass, they continue to have to pay the fee to take the exam. So it's ends up being an increase in revenue by the individual of about $2,500 per year. This is curriculum that I helped co-edit with Dr. Wayne Bueller. We tend to offer this 3 times a year. I'm involved with those classes. We average over 50 participants in each class. In the last couple of years, we've had standing room only. We've had to turn down 20 to 30 people because our facility would not hold them. The value to the industry is about $750,000 a year, and the value to society is $2.25 million. Registered landscape contractor review. I developed a curriculum for that a few years ago. Impact changed anywhere from a 30 to 40% pass rate to I'm running about 90% pass rate into the other classes. And currently, with the economy like it is, they're still averaging an increase in their businesses of around $150,000 a year. Most of them are creating 1 to 2 new jobs. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions that you may have for me. I could elaborate on many of the other certifications, but for time, I will try to do that.
Any questions for Mr. Ruth? I think we have any. We really appreciate your service.
Okay. Thank you.
You're helping
Thank you very
create
much.
jobs,
Good job.
and that's what we want. Thank you, Mr. Duckett. Next up, we'll have a public hearing on the road renaming of State Road 3526 to Ferncliff Park Drive. Mr. Creighton.
Mr. Chairman, board members, we've received a petition to rename Old Fanning Bridge Road to Ferncliff Park Drive. The reason for this is that we have a new industrial park coming in. It's over in Henderson County. It's where Sierra Nevada will be located. Bright Star Associates are the developer of that park. The main entrance road into that park is a DOT road that's been constructed by DOT. It's named Ferncliff Park Drive. So what they'd like to do is extend that name all the way out to NC 280, which is Airport Road. So, like I say, the adjoining property owners have signed the petition, and by state law, you have to basically have a public hearing. So, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Also, let me just make a note that we talked about this in pre-meeting, that this road is in 3 different jurisdictions. It's in Buncombe counties, it's in the town of Mills River, and also the town of Fletcher. They have had a public hearing and passed the resolution. We're the only one that's left to do this.
And there's no objection of those 2 jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I'm supportive, and it sounds like a smart thing to do. I'm actually just genuinely curious. So the folks that have this old address that will have, now it'll be changed, how does that work? I mean, does it magically work under our, the Google World Earth thing?
Yeah,
how does that all happen, or is it on the residents to actually fill out whatever they need to fill out to change it, or?
Yeah, in this particular case, there's really no residents.
Nobody. So right now, nobody's impacted. Nobody has an address.
Yeah,
it's just the name of a road.
Yeah, it's just the name of the road that extends to the park. So, I think there's, in looking at the petition, I think there's only 4 people that really sign it. Asheville Airport is one because they're an adjoining property owner. So the park is the other one. There's one construction company, I think, that's in there, and then obviously Bright Star.
So I'll ask you this another time, but because there's so many roads that it would help people with maps so much if they were all kind of the same name. But I understand that the mechanics that kind of I'm indicating are part of why things don't ever get changed, because it's in the short run it's a pain in the neck.
It
But
really-
anyway, we can talk offline
Yeah,
about that.
I mean, it really is, obviously, to get your mail changed, but, you know, the important thing is that we get it all changed in the 911 system
Right.
so that we can get emergency vehicle, response vehicle to you. But we try to stay away from the laurels, rhododendrons, all those, as far as any kind of name. We've got
So many
tons of
of 'em.
those in Buncombe County.
Good to know.
Okay, any other questions before we start our public hearing? Thank you, Mr. Creighton. Then I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I have 454. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on the road renaming 3526 to Ferncliff Park Drive? All right, if not, I'll close the public hearing at 4:55. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Frost, a second by Commissioner Belcher. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The road renaming is approved 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have new business. We have the county school safety report, and we'll have Mandy Stone introduce the presenters. And we will not be taking action on this today. Is that right?
That's right, Chairman Gant. I have it included in the budget, so the monetary part will be discussed there.
Okay, Mandy.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, we brought together a Safe Schools Task Force that encompassed experts, both local and experts from outside of our community, around the areas of law enforcement, both in terms of our sheriff as well as municipalities, behavioral health systems, education systems, health and human services, and that group formed the Safe Schools Task Force, and they focused on a couple of objectives. The first was to look at current policies and procedures and evaluate those. The second was to look at research-based best practices across not only the state but the nation, and to draw from those. One of the things I think our community is strongest at doing. And the third thing is to look at what were current resources and evaluate what additional resources might be needed related to all those aspects of ensuring a safe school environment. Tonight, David Thompson, the Director of Student Services at Buncombe County Schools, is going to introduce the presenters and lead our discussion.
Chairman Gant, Board of Commissioners, I thank you for letting us be here tonight to talk about our Safe Schools plan. We worked really hard at the direction of Superintendent Baldwin and Sheriff Duncan to do a thorough review of our policies and our procedures. We want to share with you some of the 4 areas of recommendations that we were making to you tonight.
And thanks, Sheriff Duncan, for being here. I see him in the audience. Sheriff, good to have you.
If we could start with the PowerPoint. Just listed who are, we have representatives of both the Sheriff's Office and the board. This is what Ms. Stone was talking about, and these were our mandates and the things that we were trying to look at. These are the group of people that we talked with from around the county. We really had a thorough interview process of multiple agencies. Some of the task force took a trip down to Cumberland County to see how they were using their school resource officers, but we tried to include all of the players in Buncombe County and taking a look at are we doing what is necessary and can we do better? What the experts say, what we really wanted to do, and what one of our guiding documents that we used was a position paper that came out from a series of experts shortly after the Sandy Hook tragedy in December. And this group of experts who charged people to look at more than just law enforcement and more than just building security. Take a balanced approach to look at what are all of the things that contribute and cause safety concerns within our schools, and how do we deal with those. Look at our educational practices. What are the curricula that we're teaching? And do we include safety measures in that? What are the programs that we put in place to support mental health, emotional and behavioral needs of our students? Because the majority of the kids that we see know that we are dealing with a high level of mental health, and often it is difficult to access services for those students within the schools. We also realize that communication is critical. We have to speak the same language. We have to be able to use the same tools. We have to be able to utilize threat assessment teams when we learn of issues that we need to pay attention to. We need to make sure that we are assessing that threat and communicating it accurately to everyone. We also know that kids are taught from an early age that you don't tattle. But we have to change that tattling mentality in schools to say it is reporting that we want you to do. Responsible citizens report. So we have to change our language. We have to communicate effectively to our students and to our parents. We also need to look at what is that connectedness. If we really want to create safe schools, we have to look at what binds us together as the community. What do we have our students involved in that make them feel part of the school, that make the schools feel part of the community, make parents feel accepted in those schools, and that we are keeping that connection so that we learn what we need to do. We also know that we need community involvement that promote welfare, and we need to have be able to identify through our counselors, our social workers, our teachers, our administrators. We need to identify who are those marginalized students, because if we identify who are those marginalized students, often those are the ones who are involved in issues regarding our safety concerns. We also know that putting in place mental health supports, putting in place social supports, making sure that we have evidence-based conflict resolution strategies, bully prevention programs, and a 3-tier behavior system called positive behavior intervention and supports, which we are doing in Buncombe County right now. As of this year, we have about 26 schools who are trained in positive behavior intervention and supports, and are using that as they set their expectations, behavioral expectations, using it as they do discipline. And by 2015, we'll have all 42 schools instituting that. We tried, in addition to talking to all of the representatives from agencies, we did parent surveys. The first survey that you see, and I think you have the entire report, copies of the entire report, we looked at a survey that was conducted in February that was an online survey. This is just a portion of a large survey that was done. When we look at this, we see that the majority of parents in Buncombe County feel that their students are indeed safe in schools. We recognize also that there are some things that we could do better. We followed this up with looking at a phone survey that we did in March to look at specific questions that the Safe Schools Task Force was looking at. The first was asking if there was support in the community from our parents for the increase of counselors and social workers in our schools. You can see there was an overwhelming response to say that they do support putting in place additional mental health. We do believe that it is the most appropriate thing to look at utilizing our own staff to provide as much of that mental health as we can. Back in several years ago, there was a Blue Ridge Smoky Mountain study that was done out of Duke University that showed that the primary place that people access their first mental health services is within the schools. So our schools, social workers, our school counselors are very adept at identifying who can benefit from increased services and helping them access that.
David, how many phone calls was this? Because
that was about 6,000.
Okay, the previous was 3,000 online.
This is about 6,000.
6,000 calls.
Yes, sir. And we can get this overnight. These phone calls go out, and we get you get the results pretty quickly. The second question that we ask is support for increasing law enforcement presence in our elementary schools. We have school resource officers in our middle schools and high schools, and those same officers are used to respond to our elementary schools. So we asked specifically about whether or not there was a support for increasing that presence in elementary schools, and I believe you see that was pretty strong support from the community for that also. The third question we ask is, do you believe that our school buildings have adequate safety measures in place? We were not surprised by this because the majority of folks felt that we could do better. We have some things in place, but we can do better. And indeed, the Board of Education has taken measures already to put in place entry systems in all of our elementary schools that are being installed now. But we are still looking at other things that we would like to put in place. Our fourth question was support for keeping schools as gun-free zones. We were very pleased with the results here that most of our parents do not believe that we need additional guns within the schools. We just need to make our schools safer in other ways, even though there was some level of support that did exist. And last, we ask if we encourage, if we have a climate in place in our schools that encourages respect and discourages bullying. For the most part, our parents believe that we do, but we also saw from these results that we could do better. We need to do something that's more than that. And do we have a timely response? And again, we can see that while we have a good number who feel that we do respond quickly, we know that we can do better, and we need to put in place those things for that too. So our plan that we came up with as a result of all of the work and the interviewing that we did is to address 4 areas of planning: our prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Our first priority is to look at our safe schools policies, our procedures, our physical security, and our district support. And this is a shortened version that we're sharing with you. So we want to share our communication technologies across all of the law enforcement agencies within the county, including AB Tech and other law enforcement agencies that exist, and make sure that we are communicating on the same radio channels, have the same equipment, be able to do the same kinds of things, and speaking the same language. We want to install cameras in all of our elementary schools, intermediate schools, and add cameras to the middle and high schools. We currently have our middle schools and high schools have cameras in them, but not all areas of this high schools are accessible to cameras, and in our elementary schools we don't have them at all. So we would like to put cameras in there because we know that cameras impact safety. The more that you see, the more that you can prevent. The more you know where your problem areas are within a building, the more support you can put in place to prevent those. We want to we also looked at our transportation system because we transport a lot of kids every day. And we know that when we have accurate and dependable camera systems on our buses, we prevent a lot of bullying, we prevent a lot of violence. Currently, we have some buses that have camera systems. Some of them are old VCR systems that are not always clear to see what happens on that bus. With this system, we will have a 4-camera system on every bus. We'll have one at the front that looks to the back, one at the back of the bus that looks to the front, one over the shoulder of the driver that looks to the door, and we will have one on the stop arm to be able to see anyone who's violating passing the stop arm, which has become a big problem with safety in the school. This one is already being done. It's being done with existing funds. We will have live GPS on all of our yellow buses so that at any point in time, anytime during the route to and from school, we will know exactly where those buses are. We will know how fast they are going. We know their approximate time of arrival. And we'll be able to monitor exactly where those buses are at any time in case of accident or anything else that happened there. Priority 2 is to look at increasing our law enforcement presence by adding additional school resource officers. Our SROs perform more than just a law enforcement duty. They are really there to build relationships with students, and that is their primary role as SROs, is to build those relationships because they are much more preventative than they are there just to react when something happens. We are recommending that there are 7 additional school resource officers, 1 for each elementary school, and then 1 school district, 1 for each elementary school district in Buncombe County Schools, and an additional 1 for our alternative high school, which does not currently have its own SRO, but I think would greatly improve the safety in that location if they did. We are also looked at our mental health initiatives. And just to focus on a couple of those, we also know that mental health needs are so negatively impacting both academic performance and discipline issues. We also know, in looking at our research that we did, that in every mass shooting there were two keys to prevention. If we had recognized the presence of a severe mental illness, we could have done more prevention. And there was some intense interpersonal conflict within that person that could not be made better, that that person perceived could not be made better. If we had been able to recognize and take action in those things, if any of those towns or schools have been able to do that, there would have been a greater likelihood for prevention. We also know that counselors and social workers increase that connectedness that we talked about earlier, and that through that early identification, we can put in place social emotional supports that keep schools safe. And we also know that those are the folks who also do our threat assessment and our safety plans to be able to do that. And we also know that punishment's really not effective for a good number of the students that we're talking about. So we really want to look at putting in place additional supports within our middle schools, had several conversations with our local agencies, and we really are actively working on putting in place other alternatives within our middle school setting, and hopefully we'll have something in place during the school year next year. We are also we would like to add 4 additional counselor social work positions next year and are asking for that. When we look at our ratios, the Association of Schools Counselors recommends a 1 to 250 ratio. The National Association of School Social Workers recommends a 1 to 250 ratio. Right now with counselors, we're at 1 to 356. And social workers, we're at 1 to 1,342. So we know that we need additional services in place for that, because having those folks in place increases the likelihood that all students will have access to mental health. These folks will conduct assessment and surveys. We will look at how we currently have students placed. We will look at how we have our counselors placed. We'll look at adjusting that ratio within the county. I'm looking at that currently so that we make sure that we have them in the right place at the right time. We are also going to implement some behavior outreach support across our district so that we are working with teachers to implement those services within the classrooms and provide some very specific trauma-focused training to those folks. Last but not least, and this is something that doesn't cost us anything, is we recognize that within Buncombe County we have a large number of services that are already available. There's great training that exists within our county. We want to maximize that and work across agencies, work across departments, work with county government, work with mental health agencies, share that training across folks so that we're maximizing the impact of that same training and not keep everything to ourselves. We also want to develop a Safe Schools Collaborative so that we are pulling those folks together at least annually to share best practice ideas, to share things that we could benefit from, and to make sure that we're utilizing those well. And last but not least, try to look at a very impactful quote to end the presentation. We found a quote from a former director of the school resource officers in Indianapolis, who says that there are 3 reasons why safe schools and security plans fail. We have the attitude that it will never happen here, we can't afford it, or we just don't have time. And we don't want to be there. We never, ever want to be there. So we're asking for your support in helping us to implement the Safe Schools Plan. Do you have any questions for me? We also have Dr. Ray Dale, who is our Director of Safe Schools, and Mike Ruby, who is our Supervisor of SROs here. So if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Were the parents that you spoke to, were they eager to participate? Were the parents that you spoke to, were they eager to participate in the survey?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, overnight, we put out a phone survey that overnight, and then we kept the survey up online so that parents who didn't necessarily have access could go online and answer if they chose to, or if they wanted to make comments, they could write in some open-ended comments into the online survey, and we did get a number of those from those parents.
could you also speak to us a little bit about the day-to-day interaction with the SROs and the students? You know,
a day-to-day interaction. Mike, we'll be glad to share this one with you. From my perspective as a school person, the interaction with our SROs on a daily basis is absolutely essential. Mike is on my speed dial. Got a call in today, and the first person I called was Mike Ruby, because I knew that if I called Mike, there would be an immediate response. It is absolutely essential. I think all of our principals would say exactly the same thing, that our relationship with the sheriff's office is second to none that we have. There's one of our most important relationships that exists, not only from knowing that they will respond to us when we need them, but knowing that they're there to prevent. They form those relationships. Kids see those guys in the building every day. Kids know who they are. The SROs knew who these kids are. It's absolutely critical relationship that they have with them.
And the day-to-day operation of the SRO and the students is, like you said, relationship building. The more relationships we build, the more barriers we tear down between law enforcement and the students and the school community, which does make it easier then to report than tattle. And I can speak all day about different incidents where the relationship that was formed between that school resource officer and his students has prevented crimes from happening within the school community. We're there not just to arrest students. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to do that, but we're there to build those relationships not only with the students but with the staff and everything else. We're informal counselors in a way that in the school, as well as instructors. We're invited into different classes to teach law-related subjects as well. So that's the reason it is. By adding SROs to the elementary, there won't be one at every elementary school if this is approved, but there'll be one per high school district, and it'll give those principals there ownership of an SRO that they would share, and they could go in and start building those relationships, being on their school safety teams, and doing that sort of thing within the elementary schools. And we think it would be invaluable if we had it there. So, thank you.
We already have some presence there. Through the sheriff's office, they have a volunteer program with all of their officers, but they come in and read to our elementary school students. And that the kids' eyes brighten when they see this guy in the uniform coming in to read to them, because so we would continue that program. Because of the collaboration that we mentioned, we would provide them with information that's relevant to bullying and other kinds of things, so that they're reading materials that kids can benefit from and strengthen the curriculum that we put in place. In addition to those kinds of things, we want to look at opportunities for other law enforcement agencies within the county to have a presence within our building, to come in, walk through, get to know our staff, get to know the buildings. Because if there is a crisis situation and we get response, we know it's not just going to be the sheriff's office that responds. It's going to be the Black Mountain Police. It's going to be the Woodpin Police. It's going to be the Highway Patrol. And we need to have those folks in the building so that they know who the principal is, they know what the building layout is, they know who to go to if they need help.
Thank you. I wanted you to expand on that a little bit, particularly people of my generation. Since I've been looking into this, a counselor means something totally different to us, and an SRO is totally foreign to those of us from my generation. But after looking into this, I realized school is a different place today than it was when I was there, and there's a much different need. Yes. Thank you.
Can you speak to the best practices, the places that the committee sought out, to gain additional information that might be outside of our own circle here?
Sure. Yeah. In many of the places that we looked, there were evidence-based bullying prevention programs that have been very effective in reducing the bullying issues in schools, which we know is very much a national and as well as a local problem. And those have been put in place. We know that one of the things that we need is a suicide prevention program. Unfortunately, we've had several successful suicides over the last several years, and several others where kids have attempted, and even more numerous ones where kids have talked about suicide. So we know we need to have an evidence-based program so that we're teaching people to recognize and respond to that earlier. We looked at some districts that are putting in place full-time SROs in every elementary school, and we looked at some that are utilizing their SROs in a very different way to try to do that regionally. We believe that we can do that with having an SRO who covers multiple schools, because we have such a responsive sheriff's office that when we need that help, it's there almost immediately. So we believe that we can do it with the staff that we are requesting and do it very effectively.
I have a question. this happened in Sandy Hook, and it's a bad thing that happened to all these children in a school. So we just had a tornado that killed 10 kids. So are we going to build all the schools tornado-proof? Not done yet.
Yeah.
If we have buses on the road and somebody decides that they want to take a bus out and it kills 25 kids, are we going to take the buses off the road? When you play the lottery, it could be 1,000,000 to 1 chance that this can happen in any area. I love kids, but I want them to be able to be kids, especially when they're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. I brought up to Sheriff Duncan that the fact is, get an officer to go in there, walk the halls, do their paperwork, park their car in the driveway. He had a better idea. He had them go eat lunch with some of their children. Highway Patrol, Black Mountain Police, I think all of them ought to do that. But I don't really get a grip on putting these other people in there to talk to kids that they're not really going to understand what they're talking to them about. Right now, you know, you got kids in there, if they're bad, they give them Adderall to calm them down. You ought to have them out on the playground running running self off. But we're trying to fix all the problems with police. One thing, 1,000,000 to 1 odds it'll happen in Buncombe County or somewhere else. We have charter schools we don't even talk about. You know, we can't give them a dime from this board. We can't give them a sheriff's officer. We can't give them anything. And I look at the facts and I saw the charts, and every chart read the same. The divisions were all the same. So that means that these people marked all yes, all of them marked something else on the charts. But, you know, I thought we was looking at resource officers. I didn't know we basically had to have people in grade school with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds to mentally look at if these kids are mentally ill. That's a little bit early, and I totally disagree with that one. You know, let kids be kids. Let them go in the playground and play. Let them run anxiety off. But we cannot stop everything from happening in this world by putting an officer in place. I'm sorry.
I understand that. I respect your opinion on that one. Unfortunately, we do see kids who have experienced extreme trauma, and that trauma has them come to school with a lot of mental health issues. And we see it happening very, very early. And that early identification makes a huge difference in their being able to be better adjusted at middle school and high school. When we came out with the recommendation, we did not want to make all of the recommendations around law enforcement. We did want to look at that balanced approach, to look at mental health, building security, putting in place the things that we know are preventative, things that research shows are preventative. Having that presence is preventative, and while it can't stop everything from happening, and we would never say that it would stop anything from happening. We know it would, but having those things in place will help us to be a safer school system.
Well, and I go back to understand that, but there's a young man that so happened has the same name I have, and he went to Finland. They don't start school until 7 years old. By the 4th grade, they're speaking 4 languages, or 5th grade, they're speaking 4 languages fluently. Every 45 minutes after they have a class, they send them outside to play. They don't give them drugs to calm them down. They let them go run it off, and then they go for 45 more minutes. Their school is 10 weeks shorter. When they get to the 8th grade, there's no 10th, 11th, 12th. They go different directions. They go college, or they go AB Tech, for automotive or whatever. What are we doing to our kids? They can't have fun anymore because there's too many people standing over their back watching them, and that's something kids are supposed to have fun. And this is putting this out there is not them having fun, because you got social workers in a grammar school that kids that couldn't understand who a social worker is, period, and they're trying to decide if these people are mentally ill or not. I apologize, but I can't go there.
I understand. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. One would just be, I think the I think about 95% of the slides were the same as ours, but there were maybe a couple of updates on it. Could we go back to the, there was one slide that I think summarized not all the costs of the recommended program, but part of it maybe related to the school resource officer slide. If you could just put that back up. I'd just like to look at it while we're discussing this.
Okay.
One question is, are the school resource officers that we have at the middle schools and high schools now, are they currently armed or unarmed?
They are armed.
Okay. And so and the school resource officers that would be at elementary schools would be armed officers? Okay. So I just wanted some clarification on slide number 33 in our presentation talks about adding an additional unarmed security guard at each high school.
Yeah.
So I just wasn't clear on sort of, is there a whether they're currently unarmed or and just
and that can be confusing. And I'll be glad to explain that. At our high schools, at actually all 6 of our high schools, they're separate entrances. Mm-hmm. Some in the back, some come in the front, and that creates a safety issue. And so, and a great example of that is T.C. Robertson High School, where a number of people will go to the front off Long Shoals Road and go into the front of the school, while other folks will go around back, what I call around back, near the library, and start unloading their kids there. They only have one person that's walking around the campus as an unarmed individual. What we're requesting and recommending is that we add an additional unarmed individual for the parking lot or the exterior of the high schools, of all 6 high schools. And their total responsibility will be to monitor the exterior of that, monitor traffic in and out of those particular facilities.
And could you just share a few thoughts? I mean, as I'm sort of trying to educate myself about these issues and thinking about the different investments that can be made, part of it seems like, of course, with the kind of horrific things that have happened in Connecticut and other places, we want to do what we can to protect the students and teachers from people from outside the schools who might want to do harm. And then part of it, too, is just keeping order within the schools, especially among some of the older students. There's, keeping the peace within the school community. If we are going to make additional investments in adding more school resource officers, particularly in the context of someone from outside the school who might want to come in and hurt people, why would you have them not be armed in that kind of event of someone who's coming there with the intention of hurting people?
Well, each high school has a school resource officer that is assigned to that particular school. And again, we're only asking for the unarmed personnel to be located at the 6 high schools because their campuses are so much larger than the other campuses that we have. And what we're trying to do is just to control traffic in. It's very difficult to lock 100+ doors, again, like at Irwin High School that has over 100 doors. Very difficult to lock and monitor that many doors. And so if we have safeguards in place that will limit or at least alter that traffic, it certainly would enhance the safety of the school.
But why wouldn't you want that person to also be armed in the event that someone's coming there with the intention of, carrying out violence?
I'm not opposed to them being armed. It's just less expensive if
it's a
going
different
with
type
an unarmed.
Of grade for the officers that would be in that role versus an armed officer. Okay,
it's a whole different thing, and I don't know. From my personal standpoint, I don't know if we would be best utilizing the skills of the resource officer by having them patrolling and watching parking lots.
But budgetary considerations are part of what weigh into that. Okay,
yes.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Sheriff, you want to address that?
Yeah. And all very good questions, and I agree with Commissioner Fryer that we can't prevent everything. When the School Safety Committee went to look at this issue comprehensively, they looked at what's the best expenditure of money, and Commissioner Newman's right on the mark. It would probably be better to have an armed person controlling that entranceway, but once again, they were weighing it by cost. And you're looking at a waged employee as opposed to an SRO who is a fully sworn deputy sheriff, which comes with a bigger price tag. One of the things that they've really focused on with the SROs is much of this school safety initiative is based on prevention. So thinking of school safety officers or SROs being there in case a armed person shows up at school to do harm. Basically what this positional paper says is if your school safety plan starts there, you've already lost. So what we use the SROs for, also to coincide with what Dr. Thompson was saying, is to establish those relationships, find out if there's issues or problems, and then preemptively address those things. So they have a much broader role than just an armed security guard. One of the things that we found out, or I think they found out during the questioning, is about every parent in Buncombe County is concerned about bullying. And that's one of the huge issues that's out there that causes us all kinds of problems that we really can't estimate what the costs are. One of the things that we want to do with these SROs and having a little extra help there is being able to engage in the elementary schools to do some anti-bullying, evidence-based anti-bullying programs that hopefully will do some preemptive things for some of these issues coming up. So, can I answer any more questions while I'm up?
I have like 3, really quick. Fortunate enough to serve on Crime Stoppers, and to me, and also what Commissioner Fryer was saying, to me this is about building relationships. And being on that Crime Stoppers board, when you hear that there can be a scuffle, an argument, and students may not say it right away to the SRO, but they have enough of a relationship, they will text the SRO what's going on. And you can't put a price tag on that. And maybe this is a question for the county manager, but I was struck by this last quote when it says, we can't afford it. Just hypothetically, like on a $200,000 house, what would the cost be for that taxpayer? $12.
There was also one other thing that Commissioner Fryer said that I think he's exactly right with, and that's the charter schools. And we have received quite a few requests from the charter schools in how to go about helping them make their schools safer. And one of the things that we look to be able to do once we take care of Buncombe County schools and then on through Asheville City schools and working with the police department is to sit down and have some dialogue with the folks who run the charter schools and see what we can do to share plans and enhance their safety. It's not that we haven't forgotten them. We're just trying to get our plan in place and making sure it's as solid as it can possibly be, and then see what we can offer as in the way of help for the charter schools, if that's just by the way of sharing information and going out and doing an assessment for them and helping them shore up their safety plans as well.
So I was recently at a spring fling at Pisgah Elementary with my grandson a week or so ago, but what's relevant to this conversation is there was a North Carolina state trooper there from Haywood County whose son happens to go there. He was there the whole day. His car was out there. And, to Commissioner Newman's question, I also thought about, the person that was unarmed. If they're unarmed, could that be done with technology? Can we save some money on this by being able to bring in North Carolina state troopers, being able to bring in retired officers? I don't know. I mean, those are just thoughts that, as I was going through all these slides, that just come to me. Is there other community, churches, law enforcement, state troopers, others that can work? Because I promise you it was pretty effective, that state trooper's car sitting out there. And one of the things he said to me, which really struck me, and I thought about all the cars that sit on, like the bridges. Every time you go down the hill at Green River, when you're going south, there's always a car sitting there. Well, it takes you years for some reason to figure out that there's actually nobody in that car. Maybe I'm slower than some other people, but he was talking about somebody flashing their lights at because of him sitting somewhere, and he said, it doesn't bother me. He said, as long as they slow down. Right. So you know what? When I wrap my head around all this, it doesn't really matter how we get there. Protect the kids. Figure out a way to do it. But to say that it has to be a certain dollar amount before there's value there is not the road that we should go. we should go and try to figure out how to do it, sure, we're going to try to save costs.
Right.
Because that's what we are doing. We're to be good stewards, as several commissioners have alluded to here.
Right.
But
and
I know the committee spent a lot of time on things like that, you know, but so I'm not necessarily questioning the committee. I'm just wanting to make sure that all circles come into this discussion and that we evaluate the best way to do it and to save as much money as we possibly can and provide the greatest good to protecting the kids. So.
Yes, sir. And a couple other things I just want to throw in real quickly so you kind of get a little bit of the big picture. We attended a meeting right after Sandy Hook, and there was a huge push to put a school resource officer in every elementary school in Buncombe County. And I forget, right, I believe that's 23, counting the optional school, it may be 26 with the optional school, and that's one of the reasons why the safety committee came together, was to be able to come and present the best cost-effective plan that we feel like will enhance the security, but not having to put resource officers at every school. So the other piece with that is that we also have, just because we have an officer in every high school and middle school, there's no overlap there. So in other words, when you got somebody sick, somebody out for training, we're continually leaving a high school and a middle school uncovered. And with this plan, the plan would be never to leave a high school or a middle school uncovered without a school resource officer. So that's a couple of the other pieces that kind of go to the whole.
And I just have a couple of comments and then one, maybe just all comments, come to think of it. One is just, I'm very encouraged by the comprehensive approach. I think it's really smart. I think it's, kind of understanding the complexities that we're sadly living through, and only are going to get more complex probably. I'm actually heartened by the understanding of in this world we're seeing so much of the mental health services cut and become more confused and harder to access, and hearing that that's the first place that most students are connecting with that. I'm very grateful for that, perspective. I think that's going to be a good thing for a lot of kids. So the final thing that I do want to say is that I'm all about, just like the rest of the folks on the table, about supporting the anti-bullying. I want to underline and underscore and ratchet it up once and say that I hope that part of the training that happens, if whether this additional folks are funded or not, is that what we do know is happening is that young women are being sexually assaulted all the time. And that is a crime. It's not bullying, and it's got to stop. It happens, people are intimidated at schools, they're at their homes, and until we have a no tolerance around that, 1 in 3 in our military. So this is an opportunity for us to raise that conversation to a different level. And I think it's absolutely appropriate through the additional resource officers and the current resource officers to begin those conversations. I'm sure you're already having it. But I just want to underscore that this has got to be highlighted within our school communities, middle school and high school, that this is absolutely unacceptable. And what better avenues to have these conversations than through our counselors and our school resource officers. Sorry at all. The part that's unfair is that, like, these folks, these are places to learn, right? This is a place for education. But we know that in this day and time, schools have become a much bigger area that we have to deal with. So I know that there's some broader community work that's happening around being a safe community, and I think there's some great opportunities to come together. But I do think it's important that particularly men are raising this issue over and over with the young men that they come into contact with constantly. Do not make assumptions that those young men know right from wrong in all this, and crimes from non-crime. So that's my bully pulpit for the day. It's very serious, though, and I mean, if everybody is just not completely appalled, you know, at the statistics that we're finding within our armed services, among other places, then we've just got a lot of work to do, and it starts right here.
I agree.
So can that happen?
Absolutely, it can happen. We already have strong partnerships with Our Voice, who come in and do some sexual assault prevention curricula with several of our high school programs. We're looking at that increasing. We also have partnerships with the Child Abuse Prevention Services to come in and look at our child abuse prevention, teaching our kids in elementary schools how to keep themselves safe and working with them on personal safety. And we also partner with that training. We provide that training to our counselors and our social workers so that they're working actively when they're doing classroom guidance about keeping yourself safe, being able to know how to communicate when there are problems and when there are threats, so that we're doing those kind of threat assessments early on and making sure that there is that lack of tolerance for those kinds of threats happening.
That's fantastic, and those are great groups, and that's exactly what needs to happen. In addition to that, you know, it shouldn't always be on the victim's side to learn how to keep safe and to how to know the signs and whatever. That's got to be part of it. That's what I'll teach my daughter. But it's also got to be taught to the perpetrator what is not okay.
Right.
And that's the flip that's got to happen.
And the same is true with bully prevention. That just working with the folks who are bullied is not the answer to that. You've got to work with the bully, and you've got to work with the bystanders. Who are those folks around who see this happening, and how can we empower them, because they have more power in that situation than most of us.
Thank you for your efforts with that. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments?
One other comment, and then I promise I'll hush on this. But you know, we've all pored over these slides a lot, and because all this means a lot to us. You know, I got a 7-year-old grandson in school, and one of the things that struck me though on slide 10, and Mr. Thompson, you might speak to it, or is that the schools, parents feel like the schools are safe. They feel like their children are safe in Buncombe County schools. Then they say that on things that are reported, they don't think they get a quick enough turnaround. There was some glaring differences between the orange and the gray bars there.
Right.
And the other thing is, you know, cameras. We put some cameras where on the business I was with before to help with theft, but they didn't necessarily help as much as we thought. And so the cameras, in speaking to the graph, if you're going to put the cameras on there, can you speak to the accountability that's going to be associated with, you know, the repeat offenders, or, you know, I remember when I rode a school bus, my school bus driver did not need no camera.
Right.
I promise you, he was fully empowered to straighten me out, and did more than once. But, you know, and looking at those two and the difficult job that you have and that this whole team has, could you speak to some of that, please?
Sure. The investigation process is very, very difficult when it comes to bullying, and you have to be very careful. What kids tell their parents is very different sometimes than what they were able to share with or tell folks within the school system. So from an administrative standpoint, that follow-up and that information that you get is critical in terms of the kinds of things that you do. We also know, and one of the things that was on one of those other slides, is that many times punishment doesn't make it better. Especially with bullying, punishment just doesn't necessarily make it better. It has to be that you are looking at all three of those groups, that your plan goes beyond just discipline, which there has to be discipline in place. We're not saying there doesn't need to be discipline, there does. But it has to go beyond discipline to address what caused the problem and how do you prevent it next time. So we will be doing active training, as we have already done with some of our administrators, with most of our administrators. We'll be adding most of that to look at that comprehensive response to those kind of things happening. School buses are, schools in general, as Commissioner Fryer said, schools are very different places than they were. Kids feel much more empowered to do things than they used to do. And having an impact on that takes a systematic approach rather than just a child-by-child approach. We have to change the culture. which is what we're trying to do with the positive behavior intervention and supports, is to change that culture so that we are knowing what's happening, kids are feeling comfortable with reporting, that we can get ahead of those things when they happen, and that we can deal with them effectively once they do. And that's going to take us a while to get there. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be a process that we put in place so that make sure that we're addressing all of those things. And that culture change will take 3 to 5 years, as most culture change does, to truly get to where we are doing that. We're seeing some great results in our schools that have done the positive behavior intervention and supports. We're seeing suspensions go down. We're seeing positive behaviors go up. We're seeing culture changes so that students are comfortable being where they are. They're comfortable in building those relationships with the adults in the building, and they share with them what they need to. So we are encouraged by that, and we look forward to that spreading around the district.
One more thing. Used to have Nathan Ramsey was the chair under David, and he said, but when he became the chair, this is basically 12 years we're looking at, so around 2000. You go to Barnardsville, and he went out there to the school one day, and all of a sudden on the buses, here come these young men off the buses with their shotguns. They took them into the office. At the end of the day, they picked them up and they went hunting. We're 12 years later. This world has changed in 12 years. What's it going to be in another 12 years? Mm-hmm. We can't fix it all. And Holly's right. Women's supposed to be respected. Absolutely. Not, it's plain and simple there. And any guy that's not a gentleman, that is totally wrong. But 12 years from carrying a gun in a school, off a bus, to going hunting that evening with it, to where we are today. That's why I said this is the news media is big. It's 24/7. 1,000,000 to 1 chance something could happen in Buncombe County, or it could have happened here. But we need to look at all directions before we go too far. That's all I'm asking for.
I agree.
And and I'd appreciate that. Van's been very good. We've talked a little bit about this, but that's sickening. 12 years,
yes.
And we've gone from being able to be a hunter to being basically having to have guards watch us all the time, and then people tell us that some of us are nuts and some of us aren't. And that's the wrong way to be. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you. And thanks to the Safe Schools Task Force, we clearly have a moral obligation to make sure our kids are safe, they're protected, and they get their mental health needs taken care of. So I think y'all have done a great job. Thank you for your time you put into this. Thank you for the collaborations you made. I think you made some really smart choices with people who to talk to, the types of folks, because it's got to be frontline on. Everybody's got to be on the same page. And I want to thank you from all the commissioners for your good work here. Okay, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Wanda Green about our county budget message for fiscal year 2014. We will be having a public hearing on this, where we will be taking comment next week. Dr. Green.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the one thing I always say every year is this is the best time of the budget for me, because a lot of the work is getting wrapped up and we're ready for some final decision making. But I do want to say that tonight's the first time for a lot of things. It's the first time we're having our budget hearing in this room. It's the first time we're having a budget hearing with this board. It's the first time we've had a 7-member board. It's the first time we've had a board elected by districts. And all that's happening when we are dealing with the very biggest first. And this is the first time we've done a reappraisal when we've had such a reduction in value in any of our careers. No one could recall that. So it has made this budget more challenging and a different animal.
Is the mic on there?
It is. Is it not loud enough? It has made this budget more challenging, and we just had to look at it in an entirely different way. I do appreciate the opportunity to bring you the 2014 budget. That budget will begin on July 1st of 2013 and run through June 30th of 2014. And with that, if we could start the PowerPoint, that'd be great. Okay. Tonight, we're recommending a budget of $337,116,416. That is broken down between the general fund at $264.8 million and the non-general fund operating plans, which are $72.5 million. And the non-general fund operating plans include things like solid waste, air quality, fire districts, transportation, occupancy tax, 9/11 funding, public safety funding, and insurance. And these are all funded with fees and special revenues. So we are focusing primarily on the general fund budget, which is, if I could go back to that, the $264.6 million, which is 0.7% below our 2013 budget, which is, and that's $1.8 million. The foundation of this budget does change every time we have a reappraisal, and the property taxes that are included in the 14 budget are based on the new appraisals. In 2003, the General Assembly required that each taxing unit publish a revenue-neutral tax rate. The School of Government provided the specifics on how that rate is to be calculated, and the components in that rate include the property tax was collected in the previous year, a growth factor that's determined with a formula that changes since the last reappraisal, and adjustments for annexation and mergers. For us, the third component didn't impact us, but the first two did. So we applied the formula specifically as the brochures say, and our revenue neutral tax rate is 57.83 cents. We had a $2.8 billion loss in the tax base. This includes residential, commercial, industrial land, vacant land, and anything that is taxable. The cumulative loss is $2.8 billion. The value of an old penny was almost $3 million, and the value of a new penny is $2,715,000. So the penny is worth $276,000 less. So the old rate at 52.5 cents and the revenue neutral rate is 57.83 cents. This is the first budget with the commissioners that are elected by districts. And the reappraisal had a different impact on every district. And one of the points I want to make is within every district, it's also different. But if you look just at residential, here's our three districts. And if you look just at residential, in total, the properties decreased by 3.1%. And these are raw numbers that do not yet reflect any appeal loss. And when you look at the parcels, in total, 44% of the parcels increased in value, while 56% decreased in value. But I wanted to further break those down for districts because it is going to affect what you hear from your constituents. If we start with District 114, there was actually a pre-appeal loss increase in that district. When you look at the breakdown, it's almost an even number of increases and decreases, basically 51% decrease and 49% increases. So your district had an entirely different outcome than moving on to District 115, which had a 3% reduction in value. And the breakdown between the properties were 57% of the parcels had reduced values. And you can see that on both the bar and the pie graph. If we move on to District 116, it's entirely different. It had the largest reduction in value at 6.9%. The breakdown between the properties, we had a decrease on 61.4% of the parcels, an increase on 38.6% of the parcels. So when you do hear from your constituents, you are going to hear something very different based on your district. But I also want to point out to you that inside each of these districts, you can have as much variation from neighborhood to neighborhood. You'll have neighborhoods that have gone up significantly and others that have really dropped significantly. So that's just as a foundation because we built our budget based on these pieces of information. So what is a North Carolina county? During our orientation and the essentials classes that we attended just after the election, it was clear that North Carolina counties are arms of the state. If you go to the State Association of County Commissioners, they'll tell you we're partners more than we're two separate units of government. So we really don't govern alone. You have a Board of Commissioners, we have a county government, we have state agencies that tell us what to do through a lot of regulations, we have a General Assembly that passes laws and gives us guidance, and we have a federal government that has a very significant impact on our services and costs because we provide so many programs that really are originated at the federal level. When we saw this graphic in January, I think it speaks more clearly than most that you see about where there are distinct services that counties can provide, that municipalities can provide. So if you look at the lighter pink, those are services that only municipalities can provide. If you look in the darker kind of peach-colored, the building codes come from the state, and the local governments build their codes based on that. In the lighter peach, you can see those are things that both cities and counties can do. But if you look at the little bit darker yellowish green, those are the services that the state says we will provide for them. So that's where we are very much an arm of the state. When you focus on the county just coming down to the local level, there's still a lot of input on the types and qualities of services we provide. And even there, it's not something that you do alone as a board. You have other elected officials, you have such as boards of education, you have authoritative boards that also have a lot of influence on how services are provided and what services are provided. That's from the Human Service Board, Mental Health Board, Elections Board. All of those come to be in a different way, but they have a lot to do with the operations that we provide. Okay, so I do think we've made some good investments and we're beginning to see some turn in our economy. I'm not sure how long we bounce at this level, and I don't think we will ever recover as quickly as we have in past recessions, but I do think we've begun to see a turn over last year. Unemployment is down to 7%, which is down below the 9% it reached up in the recession. Certainly not at the 3 to 4% we were experiencing pre-recession. The Beverly Hanks reports that there's a 21% increase in the sale of existing homes over this time last year. There's also a 19% decrease in the months of inventory that are out there for sale. And since late 2008, through EDC, we have announced the investment of $656 million and just over 2,700 new direct jobs. As we develop this budget, we continue to use our guidelines of focusing on core services, realigning existing resources, and maintaining a long-term planning focus. As a local government, we focus on our core services of health, safety, and education. And with the following graphs, I want to show you how some of our service levels have grown during the recession. If you take a look at this first one, since July of 2009, family and children households on Medicaid, which is the red line, have increased from 17,600 to 20,600. And the blue line are the adult Medicaid cases, and they've increased from 11,200 to 12,600 over the same period. So together, that's an increase of over 4,500 households that are now on Medicaid. If you look at the next graph, you can see that households on food stamps increased by over 8,000 households between 2008 and now. And while a lot of these are federal monies that come into the community, it's very important that we handle this volume of work without error, because even though it may come in as federal or state money, an error is paid back with 100% county money. So quality of work is extremely important. So while the things are improving, we still have a large demand for our service, both in human service, and I want to also shift to public safety. That workload continues to increase also. Ambulance calls are up from 24,800 in 2011 to 25,300 in 2012. That's an increase, but the important thing too is we are transporting about 70% of the time that we respond, so it's a pretty significant volume of work. And in the first 4 months of 2013, sheriff calls for services were at 21,300. That's up 6.5% over last year, so still large increases in our volume of work. So we put some of these things on a map to just show you what that looks like in the county, where we're providing those services. So if you take a look at this, there's actually dots. Those blues run together, but they're really dots for every place a client lives, and that's our food assistance and Medicaid. If you add to that, that's our food assistance and nutrition. Okay. If you add to that on this one, the Medicaid and other human service programs, there's a significant pattern begins to develop in terms of where the services are provided in the community. A lot of it along the I-40 corridor, and 26 is pretty significant. I want to look at public safety because these are where our public safety calls are. And there is a pattern. Now I'm going to lay all four of them together, and you lose sight of some of the color because they're all very much driven by the same client base and the same communities and neighborhoods. So if just backing up to take a look at it, you can see that we have a tremendous service demand throughout our community. And if you take a look in the top right-hand corner, then you see a lot of watershed area. I mean, areas where there just are no residents. So just moving through those one more time so you can see. So we do provide a lot of services, particularly some of our human services and some of our public safety is provided regardless of corporate limit. We have made some smart investments on behalf of our community. Much of that is through technology and integrating our services. We tried to eliminate our silos so that we streamline our services and we're working together in a way that it's a much more holistic treatment of our clients and citizens. We've gone paperless to make it easier to access information that's needed by our departments to serve our citizens. And that also improves our use of floor space. 20 years ago, everything got generated in paper. And we're going through the backlog and have made great progress reducing that and putting that into a paperless environment. Now we do a lot more work without ever producing the paper. We've renovated facilities and invested in technology to provide services in a manner that makes it much easier to get service and it's more convenient for our citizens. Cox Avenue is a good example of how we make it easier for a citizen to spend less time negotiating the service delivery system and getting more service at one location. That's served us very, very well, and it makes it so much easier for a citizen to get service from us. We just can't do it alone. This is not a day when we can stand alone and do everything we need to do. So as we've looked at our core services, we've focused on what we have to provide and what we need to assure is available in the community. We've entered several smart partnerships that help us do several things: leverage additional funds, reinvest in core services, and expand our community capacity. Over the last 6 years, through the combination of revenue, cost savings, cost avoidance, and new dollars leveraged, we've had a $26.5 million impact on human services alone. The stories are similar and proportionate in our other departments and functions. That is, and it will continue to be, how we manage and move the county forward. That's the only way we can do that within the constraints that we have. So let's take a moment and look at and shift to looking at our revenues and expenditures. So where does the money come from? If you look at our revenue streams, they're very limited for North Carolina counties, and that's very much by design. Our major sources are property tax, intergovernmental revenues, sales tax, and user fees. Property tax represents about 58.4% of our revenue stream. And this chart gives you the full breakdown of our revenue sources. And as you can see, the top three sources, property tax, sales tax, and intergovernmental revenues, represent 86.7% of our revenue stream. Intergovernmental revenues are primarily to offset some of our human service costs. I want to talk for a minute about sales tax because we hear a whole lot about it, and it is a big funding source for us, but it's a complicated revenue stream because every time sales tax changes, the county's portion comes with more restrictions. So our current sales tax rate is 7%, and out of that 7%, 4 3/4 of it is kept by the state. Out of Articles 39, 40, and 42, the three in the center, 0.95 cents goes to city and county school capital. 1/4 cent is earmarked for AB Tech capital, which leaves basically 1.05 cents for county operations. But having a sales tax begin to recover is really critical to our budget, even at 1% of it coming to us. Each year we do appropriate fund balance with the intention of finding a way in the course of the year to save it. This budget also includes a fund balance appropriation of $7.7 million. That is down about $400,000 from 2013. As you can see in the graph, we do have a really good track record for saving that money. We don't know today how that will happen, but we are determined it will happen. We do expect 2013 to finish in the black, probably by the fewest dollars we've ever finished, but we do think while it's under six figures, we'll still finish in the black. We can move on to our expenditures. Our expenditures for core services of education, human service, and public safety represent 84.7% of our budget. General government, which includes required services like tax, elections, register of deeds, and administrative support, represents 9.8% of our budget. This next budget gives you just a little bit different picture of where the dollar goes. And, you know, if you look at our core services and then our required services, we're down to a very small margin that we have any discretion with. This budget does provide $75.9 million for education, and there's an additional $17.5 million for education debt that's paid through the school capital fund. This budget does reduce funding for AB Tech based on the excess county funds they're holding in investments, but we do expect that AB Tech will pay the staff supplements with the funds that we provide. We think that that's sufficient. If you look at this functional breakdown, 38.5% of our budget is for salary and benefits. 38.6% is for program support, which can be anything from education to foster care and emergency services, things that come through our social service department. 14.3% is for county department operating expense, and 7% is for debt service for county projects. So it breaks out in a way that might be a little bit surprising to folks. You can see in this next graph that historically our revenues have exceeded our expenditures, and this is what we really strive for, because if we can bring in other sources of revenues that exceed or even with our expenditures, we're able to save the appropriated fund balance. While we can't do it alone, we don't have only the county's impact, the county dollar impact on the community. Our services have a really significant impact on the community. And through primarily human services, we leverage $394 million into the community, primarily for Medicaid and grocery stores. They receive the largest portion of that. Those are direct dollars. When you estimate the economic impact of those leverage funds, the impact is $674 million. So it's easy to say that Buncombe County government has a $1 billion impact on the community with the work that we do. There are some new costs in the budget, and these are the things that are really driving the changes in our budget. First, we have our capital plan, which we set, and we think that can be read. But the things that are included in the capital plan include a new HVAC system and elevator for our Haywood Street building, a new roof and elevator for the first tower of our detention center, and together those four items are $2.3 million. It includes a firing range at the public safety training facility, at which we estimate it between $9 and $10 million. It includes the Isaac Dixon Elementary School replacement. We've put an amount in there at $18 million, but we are really waiting for the construction managers at risk to come back with a more realistic number on that. We do have an AB Tech classroom building at the public safety training facility at $7 million, and AB Tech Allied Health with parking deck at $50 million. So these projects all have really different histories. Some are long-term plans, some are very significant needs, some are just major maintenance that we can't let go, and others relate to the new funding streams that we have. So to help us work through the details, because this has been a different budget year with a lot more information that needed to come forward, so to help us work through the details, on these specific projects. We're going to hold a working lunch for the commissioners next Tuesday, June the 4th at 11 o'clock in our larger conference room back here. And at that time, the staff will go over all the projects in more detail and provide some of the history on how and why these projects are in our capital plan, what we've done to date. There are some where we've had community meetings and have a really good feel for what the community will and won't tolerate. There's some that we have lost some contracts and just need to make some changes, or we're not going to have a facility for some of these operations. So I think with the information that we provide next Tuesday, you'll have better information to prioritize these capital projects and determine what you'd really like to see in the budget you adopt on June the 25th. I have included in this budget the county cost for the recommendation on school safety that we just heard. That's at $1.2 million and does include the SROs and social workers. The next thing that we have here is in social service. We have a change primarily in federal revenues for adult protective services, child welfare services, and 4E funding. That loss is estimated at $2.4 million. I had a very interesting email over the weekend. Someone said, well, can't you just say we won't do that? Well, I suppose we could say that, but the federal government would then come to the state and say, state, go on up to Buncombe County and provide these services. And Buncombe County will pay for them, regardless of how well you manage providing these services. So the county's going to pay for them. And we wouldn't have any choice, and we also would not have those services administered with the care for the long-run impact of the cost for these services. So while it would be nice if we could just say no, no was really not an option. It was not an answer we could give. We do plan to have the courthouse turned over to us in September for our opening before the new calendar year begins. So the maintenance and operation of our new courthouse and the need to open some new pods in the detention center is $1.2 million. Last year, the state required us to keep misdemeanors from the 91st to the 180th day. We had been keeping them up to the 90th day anyhow. While they do provide some revenue for that, we've seen the population grow by 75 to 80, so we are in the need to open a couple more pods so we can continue to house what we're required to house. The Affordable Care Act has been a work in progress as we've implemented the different components of that. We are experiencing, because of having to cover children up to the age of 26, and then there's a new reinsurance fee that has to be paid this year, and the impact of that is $928,000. I think it's doing part of what it's meant to do, and I don't know if we'll see changes at the federal level or not, but I think that we have to include these costs in the budget because the children are enrolled and the fee is required. We have a request for a new ambulance and a crew at $552,000. The caseload is going up, and when you look at 660 square miles, we really operate with 13 ambulances, which is not the coverage area, especially in the downtown area. We need more coverage, and that's where this ambulance would be stationed. We also have to pay our first debt service is now included on the public safety training facility for the fire portion and the driving track. And sometimes, I wouldn't call this a gift from the state, but you know the state owes the federal government really close to $3 billion for unemployment cost, and they've determined that the best way to accumulate those funds is to make every employer, not just government, but every employer pay a percentage of payroll up to a certain percent. And you have to reserve those to pay those unemployment costs. And for us, that's $630,000. So those are the big items that really shift this budget and new costs that we're not able to avoid. We do have an opportunity through House Bill 418 to create a Culture and Recreation Authority in Buncombe County. For the county, that would mean moving libraries, parks, greenways, and recreation under a newly established governmental structure. It's not new cost, it's moving existing costs to a different governmental structure. The bill has passed the House and is currently in the Senate, and last week the Senate passed their budget and moved it on to the House, so we expect the Senate soon to be ready to start acting on the bills that have just been sitting in committee over there. If passed, the county would transfer management of property, planning, and programs to the Culture and Recreation Authority. The tax rate for the authority is capped at 7 cents. The current cost for culture and recreation in the county's budget represents 3.5 cents of property tax. So as the bill progresses and municipalities determine their interest in being part of the Culture and Recreation Authority, the rate would have to be adjusted to cover the costs that municipalities would transfer to the authority. We've had 4 of our municipalities call us with some interest either in absolutely being in the authority or knowing a little bit more about what would the impact of being in the authority. So if the board authorizes the Culture and Recreation Authority, how we budget for libraries, parks, greenways, and recreation will change. It also changes how we plan for culture and recreation capital, and it changes how we work with the municipalities around these issues. And if it's approved, we will work to have a really seamless transition as we build the staff of the Culture and Recreation Authority. And this does, like I said, impact $9.5 million and over 80 county employees. City of Asheville has expressed a real interest in moving into the authority. Weaverville, Black Mountain, and Woodfin have all talked to us but have not made as much a statement of interest as the others. So it does. These are the capital projects we have in our plan for culture and recreation. They're all around libraries, greenways, and master plans for recreation. So those would transfer to the Culture and Recreation Authority to plan and manage going forward. Like I said, it is a 3.5 cent tax rate to start just for county projects. We have made it clear that we do need the bill to be moved so that when we get to June 25th, we're able to adopt a budget and know what our tax rate can be. We have built the general fund portion of this budget on a tax rate of 56.9 cents. So we would have the 2 separate tax rates, but if for any reason the Culture and Recreation Authority doesn't move forward, it takes the combination to fund the budget that you have before you. We also, tonight, will set, not tonight, but in the budget, we'll set tax rates for fire districts, city schools, the city school supplemental rate, and we've asked the representatives from the county schools and the city schools and the fire districts to be here next week, not necessarily to make presentations, but to answer any questions you might have about their tax rates. There are 5 fire districts that are asking for an increase, and they're not big increases, they're all small, but the revenue neutral rate is calculated, and it is in the letter that we put out and it's posted on the agenda. You know, as always, the budget is a plan, and we make our best assumptions about the future. We continue to watch the state and particularly federal action to determine where we might see changes. And I do want to talk about some of the things that we are watching that we may have to include before the budget's over. Any additional changes in the federal government's budget, that can include a couple of things. Either they say that they're not going to fund something anymore, they're not going to fund it at that level, or that they're going to require you to provide a service and they're not going to fund it at all. So it's either an unfunding of mandates or an unfunded mandate. We watch those closely. Unfortunately, the federal government does not pass their budget until they have an October 1st start date. So we have to make our best guess, and we have to sometimes say we will delay some of our expenditures until we know for sure what they've done. So that's part of how we accommodate changes at the federal level that we just don't know about yet. If you look at the General Assembly, they've introduced 1,736 bills this session. 338 of them have a county impact, and there are about 50 to 60 bills that we are watching closely as it moves through the state system, and we also are watching the budget very closely. It has gone governor's budget, Senate budget, and now it's in the House. So we're hoping that what we didn't like coming out of the others, we're able to get adjusted in the House budget. There are services that we provide countywide that are popular things for the General Assembly to take a look at, whether there are human service programs, our public safety programs. Libraries are often a target for reduced aid funding. And then we also are seeing some changes in lottery funds and how they would be used for education. We do have to build K-12 schools and court facilities. So any bills impacting these areas could have a budget impact on us, so we'll watch them close between now and the end of the long session. We have been told that they should be out of long session before we adopt a budget, so knock on wood, and we hope that's the case. From an operational standpoint, beginning September the 1st, citizens will pay their motor vehicle tax when they renew their tag. Historically, the practice has been you renew your tag 4 months from now. If you did that today, 4 months from now, you'll get a property tax bill. We will pursue that and collect it. The penalty for not paying on time for us is we'll charge you interest, but there's no real penalty until it's time to renew your tag again. So transitioning this so DMV collects the property tax when you get your tag is a major shift in how services are provided. That has been a moving target, and now we've moved from July 1st, which is when it's supposed to start, up to September 1st. But there is a Senate Bill 305 that proposes to increase fees paid to contract license agents. These fees would have to be paid by counties. This is a bit of a surprise to everyone at both State Association of County Commissioners. They're working very hard to keep this from happening, but if it does pass, we will incur these additional fees. So they're running some estimates to see what that will be. It's something that came up right at the last minute, and that's why there was a delay between from July to September. Based on some work that's being done around school inspections at the request of a school board member, we may not be able to avoid adding 2 full-time inspectors this fall. We're doing our best to avoid that, but have had some issues around that. Like I said, we use lottery funds for school construction. Neither the governor's budget nor the Senate budget continues to use them for that purpose, but we are trying to get that corrected through the association in the House budget. There's also a proposal to close the Swanota Youth Development Center and other ADAC facilities. This impacts our ability to provide services locally, increases our cost also for transporting juveniles and other clients to facilities that would remain open. Commissioner Frost and Commissioner Fryer, along with Representative Ramsey, last Friday visited these facilities. This impacts not only our services, our service delivery, the costs associated with that, but these are real jobs in our community too. So we want to push really hard to keep these facilities open. There is also a federal proposal to reform tax-exempt municipal bonds. This will apply to outstanding as well as new bonds that are issued. And because this is income-driven, we're not able to know right now what impact that could have on our ability to attract investors. But that would be the big thing, is the interest rate going forward on debt. There are some other community service block grants and home funds that the feds are proposing to cut, and a lot of effort on the part of the NACO to keep that from happening. But like we said, we adopt before the feds. We'll do our best to have the best information we can have, or to delay expenditures anywhere we can in order to accommodate those things that are still in play. I share these with you for a couple of reasons. This is just a sample of the things that can happen. But we need to be vigilant as we communicate with our legislators about the impact that these can have on our government and our citizens. So as we hear more and know more, we'll share that information with you, because you do come across the legislators with some regularity. I know that each of you and myself too are very proud to represent this organization and to serve our citizens. Our department leaders and employees are tremendous. It's their dedication, their creative thinking, their collective wisdom, and their willingness to work together and share ideas that see us through the tough times and find better ways to make things happen. And I'd like to ask that all the county employees who are here today stand, if you don't mind, if you would. These are great folks. Please join me in thanking them for the job that they do. And I also want to say a special thanks to 2 people. Diane Price for her tremendous work on the budget. She knows our budgets inside out and can answer any question at the drop of a hat. She also understands how it all works together and does a good job of making us a great organization. So Diane, thank you. Let's give her a hand. Appreciate that. There's one other person I want to thank, because she's been here for lots of days working on this PowerPoint. I want to recognize Lisa Eby. She does understand very well the impact that we have on this community, and I want to thank her for putting the PowerPoint together, for sharing some very key points, and for keeping me on task with the points that we wanted to share tonight. So Lisa, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And if we could put the PowerPoint back up for just a minute. We are required to hold a public hearing on the budget. That public hearing is scheduled for 4:30 next Tuesday on June the 4th. It will be in this room, and I hope everyone will have an opportunity to review the budget so they can share their thoughts and concerns with us and the questions that they have. This year, because people may have questions and want answers before they actually get here next week, you can email us at the address is budget@buncombecounty.org. Those will come to Diane and myself. We will answer those questions, share those answers with you so that you know what questions are being asked. But that is up and running now if people want to email us. That's the fast version through the budget. Tremendous amount of work by a lot of people in a lot of departments. And I appreciate your patience and support as we put this budget together. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, are there any questions or comments based on the realization that we will be taking this back up 2 times next Tuesday, one in the capital needs discussion and secondly in the public comment, public hearing version of this? Just any general comments?
Does Dr. Green present this PowerPoint again to the public, or was this just for us?
It'll be on the TV channel, and there are people who are able to stream it now. So if people want to see it, then they would need to watch it in the presentation on film. We didn't plan to present it again.
So our questions regarding the budget were next week.
I would recommend that. I think that's what we talked about in pre-session. I think I think there are 2 reasons for that. One of them is you may get some questions answered. You just got this in one big chunk today. Secondly, I think it is a better way to do it to have the public comments as well, so you kind of together you kind of see what you have questions about. So that's my recommendation. Any I know we have comments. Anything today? Again, we'll be going this over in 7 days. Okay.
There is one thing I'd like to share. I had a call from Commissioner Belcher over the weekend. As you talk to people who are on fixed incomes, there are a couple of pieces of information that you could share with them. Judy, if you wouldn't mind to put that PowerPoint up. There are ways that people can come into the tax department and look to see if they're go through the process to see if they're eligible for any kind of exemptions. And those exemptions include elderly or disabled. There's disabled veterans exclusions. There's circuit breaker, which we don't have a lot of people who do circuit breaker. It deals really with the value of the home, the income, and a fixed time period. And there's the present use program for tax deferment on land that's used for farm, for long-term growth, like forestry. Then when you look, this is a little more information about how the elderly exemption and the disabled exemption are calculated, the components that will be in the calculation. It deals really with their income and the value of the home, but the value of the home is not, there's not a restriction on that. It could be a $500,000 home, it could be a $100,000 home. It's really driven by income. And then just so people can read this, there's a specific exemption based on, for being a disabled veteran, based on the income in the family. And then the circuit breaker, which is not very well used and a little more complicated to explain, still is available to citizens. You have to be a certain age and be disabled and own your property for a specific period of time. But and that defers your taxes. It doesn't exempt you from them completely. The others are the elderly exemption is mostly an exemption. But if you want, you can take that back down now, Judy. But there are ways that citizens who have fixed incomes and challenges could come in, talk to our tax department, reach them at 250-4900, and get connected with someone who could help them understand, given their circumstances, what the possibilities are.
Is that information sent out with the tax bills?
It is sent out with the tax bills. There's forms they can fill out and apply for those exemptions. They're also online, but sometimes people need a little help walking through them.
Thank you.
Any other comments at this point? Okay, we have, next up we have the Special Projects Ordinance, and Dr. Green, if I could just ask you to go through that. That is, was on the consent. We wanted to hear a little more about it.
This is a $200 million loan to Mountain Housing for the Eagle Market Street project. It's something.
$2 million.
And I said, I've been too many big numbers I'm going through. It's a $2 billion loan, excuse me. It's one we committed to last year. Commissioner Belcher's holding his chest over
I was looking at Scott.
Between that and finding out that there's nobody in those police cars, I mean, that was really rocked my world tonight.
Well, the $2 million is a loan to Mountain Housing for the Eagle Market Street project. They are leveraging a significant amount of I just drew a total blank on the type of tax financing that they're drawing down, and the city is also putting some money into this. But anyhow, it helps them fund the project. This is a loan; it is not a gift. We'll let them draw it down, and we'll draw the contract so they can draw it down as they have expenses, like you would do a construction loan. I think we can work with them to get what they need when they need it to bring this project to fruition.
Okay.
It is coming out of existing.
So it's not going to be a $2 million check written up front. It'll be drawn as needed.
It'll be under contract. We'll have a contract with them, and it'll be drawn as needed. Okay. It is coming from existing year funding, so and I'm happy to answer any questions or take any concerns that you might have about that. So we make sure we include them in the contract.
Any questions? I know there was concern about the lump sum, and I think you answered drawing it out over time.
Yeah, we're never.
Mr. Dedman here. It's good to see Mr. Dedman with answer any questions. Okay. Any questions from us? Okay, is there a motion to approve the special projects ordinance?
Move approval.
Is there a second? There's been a motion by Vice Chair Jones, a second by Commissioner King. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have board appointments. Any nominations for the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee? We have 4 vacancies. I'll nominate John Byers. Is there a second?
Second.
All righty. Any other nominations? All those in favor of appointing Mr. Byers to the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. He is appointed. Mr. Frew, no changes since pre-session that we do not need a closed session. Is that correct?
Correct. No closed session.
Then with the announcements, the board will meet to discuss capital needs on June 4, beginning at 11:30 in room 316 at 200 College Street in downtown Asheville. The next regular meeting of the commission will be June 4, beginning at 4:30 in Commission Chambers, 200 College Street, room 326 in downtown Asheville. The public hearing and public comment on the fiscal year 2014 budget will be held at this meeting. The Commission's second regular meeting will be held on June 25, not June 18 as regularly scheduled, due to our budget considerations and trying to get the General Assembly information and making sure we have a budget that considers their actions. That will begin at 4:30 in Chambers at the same place. Commission meetings can be seen on BCTV Charter Cable Channel 2, ATT Uverse Channel 99, live on buncombecounty.org during the meetings, or online anytime at buncombecounty.org. Since we do not have a closed session today, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Frost. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fryer. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We're adjourned.